You're listening to the Sokan Community Podcast. Your favorite source for gaming, film, and internet debate starts now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sokan Podcast. I'm your host, T, and with me are Jace and Leo.
Jace, Drayson!
Hello, I'm Leo.
This is it, guys. This is the end of our seasonal run.
How do I say goodbye till next season?
If My Heart Shall Go On starts playing in the background, we'll just forgive us a little bit.
That's me and Kanan's song.
Gross.
Anyway, are there any highlights you guys would like to share for a recording session these last few months?
One of the funniest moments for me was when Jace shouted out and when I asked about what the name of the condition was. When someone's head is too big and their eyes are too big. Oh man, that was funny.
We had to bleep that, so let's try that again.
Oh, that's right. No.
That part didn't there.
That's right. Oh, that was
edited
funny.
That out. Are we editing this out too since it's a flashback that didn't flash? I just feel like one of our missed opportunities was, it was a good long season and everything, but we never talked about Star Wars, and I feel like we could have taken a little time out to talk about Star Wars.
We missed that opportunity. You're totally right. There's just so much that's been going on with Star Wars, and I feel like, it's all there for the taking, and here we've just completely skipped over it.
I do have to say that one of my highlights is it wasn't necessarily a topic. I mean, sure, I love talking about Tom Holland. That's always fun. I liked talking a little bit about The Expanse on that one show because The Expanse is my fave, but just hanging out with you guys and our illustrious crew in the background, old Rut and Sill. That sounds like a dirty movie, Rut and Sill. But it's been really great. I like you guys, and it's fun to do this. It's fun to get in here and just horse around.
It sounds like a deer hunting season. It's Rut and Sill time.
I actually went and watched the first couple episodes of The Expanse because you liked it so much.
And
Did you like it?
I enjoyed it. It was significantly more existential horror than I had been initially expecting, which I wasn't opposed to. I definitely went, oh, okay.
It gets even more so. That first season especially gets even more so.
Existential horror. That isn't what I would have used to describe it, but I think that fits it really well.
No, it's a good show.
Alright, well today we are not talking about The Expanse, though maybe we will next season. For today, in our Season 4 finale, we're talking about brand deals in gaming, the upcoming Picard series, and, filling the quota one last time, The Rise of Skywalker. So advertisements are everywhere. They're inescapable pop-ups, all sorts of other things that we've just gotten used to. But another frontier that they've expanded into relatively recently has been into video games. Brand deals have been taken in exchange for sponsorship towards the game. So some examples are small, like you might just see a certain Soda Empire's vending machine in the background of one of your levels, but others are a lot bigger, like everything Fortnite has done with new Disney movies. Recently, even Tom Clancy's Breakpoint added in features from the Terminator franchise as a brand deal with the new film. In cases like these, where the game and the films have been established as existing in different realms, and very different realms at that, is it stretching for them to be related in these sponsorships, or do you think that any brand can sponsor any game and it wouldn't really matter?
I think I don't know, as with most things, it depends on scale, and it depends on how egregious those kinds of crossovers can be. Breakpoint, as far as I'm aware, is set in it's set in Earth, in our reality. So having the Terminator referenced, I mean, I don't know if that's too crossing over. If you do the Terminator in like Elder Scrolls, in an Elder Scrolls game, that's probably a little bit too far.
He is so sensitive about his Elder Scrolls. He won't even let us have dragons without complaining about it. It's just the Terminator. You don't know. Maybe that alien maybe that future robot. Hey, don't we have robots anyways? Like,
We have
isn't Aaron a
automatons.
robot? Maybe
Stop
she's
it.
Aaron
Nope,
is a
Michael Kirk
Terminator.
writing.
Maybe
I don't
he's
have a
just
problem.
a really weird vampire.
Maybe.
Uh,
Here's the tea for me. I don't have a problem with advertising being in games because I know that these games aren't real, and I know that money is what makes them good. So for someone to get a sponsorship to make a game that I like be better, I'm not going to pick it apart because perhaps it might pull me out of the moment a little bit. Sure, I'm with Leo on the fact that I agree. If it makes sense in the world, Detroit Become Human, you have a Coca-Cola machine in the background. You know, you may not even notice it, but it's there, and it kind of might add a little bit of reality and immersion even in that instance. There are other places where it would absolutely break your immersion, but I'm not going to freak out about it. I know that these developers do this to make money, and I say let them.
yeah, I mean, as a guy, in my real life, I do a little bit of marketing and brand recognition work for the credit union that I work for, and I actually think these kinds of sponsorships are kind of brilliant. To be able to get your brand integrated into something that people are playing, I don't know. I think it's a really cool idea for recognition. Now, again, within reason, so long as it matches the landscape of the game, it's fine. Something like Fortnite, I mean, it's a silly, goofy, whatever kind of game anyway. So putting Star Wars characters, I mean, who cares? You could put Care Bears in there. And
That'd be fun. Care Bear Stare.
Yeah, Care Bear Stare weapon. Yeah, it'd be great. Man, I remember that show.
Fairly early days of my childhood. So do you think that this happens in fighting games a lot, because like we'll see them added across different franchises, but they are still the same genre of game and they're both games, so sometimes it's just kind of like a cool trade-off. But when games pull in popular franchises as sponsors, so with Disney characters, Star Wars characters in Fortnite, do you think that Fortnite is trying to get publicity from Disney, or that Disney is trying to get publicity through Fortnite?
So with these kinds of marketing opportunities, I think these are mutually beneficial arrangements. That's actually another part of what I get to do with the credit union I work for in real life. We offer sponsorships and things like that with a number of our partners, but we're also interested in trying to make them as mutually beneficial as possible. And I think these are the same thing. With the instance that you mentioned, T, Fortnite trying to get Disney customers and Disney customers trying to get Fortnite customers, it's mutually beneficial. I don't see one existing without the other existing.
Yeah, I would say that it works, and if something works, it's not stupid. I want to say I think it was Endgame. It might have been Infinity War, but I think it was Endgame. When it came out, Fortnite brought in a Thanos character to play, and I was real confused by this because this was kind of like when Fortnite was just on the periphery of my my internet meme understanding, and I knew it was there, but I really didn't understand what the hell the big deal was. But then I suddenly became aware that Thanos is in Fortnite, and this piqued my interest enough that I began to Google and find stuff out. Now, it didn't make me interested enough to log in and play or to pay any money to play the game, but I think that's the type of thing that you gain exposure by putting yourself in something that's already really cool and fun and popular. And it worked for me. It worked on me, and I actually teach a class on how to resist advertising, so I fell for it.
Yeah, we teach a similar class, I think. Don't fall for every single little thing.
Yeah.
Spend your money wise. I mean, financial literacy is a huge deal for us. So yeah,
I teach it
resist
to
it.
To
Hey, what do you
8th
do?
graders.
We're actually a teachers credit union, so we teach a lot of students.
I think we've talked about Fortnite more than like any other non-franchise game.
Didn't we? Isn't that weird? It's zeitgeist, man.
Yeah. And have any of us played it?
Not a second.
Nope.
No. Yeah,
Now
it's crazy.
I've been in the room while people played it because during long story short, went to hang out with family during one of the holidays, and my nephews were playing it, and I watched them play it. So I've been present while the game was actually being played.
I was in the room.
I actually watched them.
I've been Fortnite adjacent.
Yeah.
I've never even seen it played. I've only seen like commercials of it and stuff, but it really is a cultural phenomenon.
Off topic. So then, in that case, where do you guys think the line is between an Easter egg and something that disrupts your immersion?
An Easter egg is fun. Easter egg gives you a little, oh, look what they did moment. Something that breaks immersion is like, this doesn't belong here at all. I can't understand why this Dunmer is putting quarters into a change machine where that says Coca-Cola. But, you know, like there's a huge difference between what is kind of a cute little wink to the audience and a big FU to the audience. If you want to wreck someone's immersion and lore, you can, well, put a vending machine in a Tamriel. I mean, that would wreck it. But if you want to do something really cute and maybe add a line into some dialogue that is something that we know is a famous tagline, I'm loving it, for instance, McDonald's, you know, we'd smile and nod and wink at that. That's fine. I think that it's a matter of respect. If you respect the material, the game material or the world material, then I think most people are going to be okay with it.
I think another aspect of an Easter egg is that it's one of those things that you kind of have to know what the Easter egg is about in order to get it. I don't know if sponsorships are wise to even go that direction for what I would consider an Easter egg. To me, that's one of those things where you uncover, you know, some obscure reference to a meme or to another game or to, you know, something that only those who are, quote, in the know would appreciate. That doesn't really fit the mold of what I'd consider an advertisement. If I'm going to advertise, I want it plain as day what it is that, you know, I want people to be aware of or to know of. And it doesn't really fit that. It doesn't fit even for that category. So I don't know. I'm not sure that there really is a fine line between those two because they seem completely different to me.
Well, there's a difference between, say, an ad and product placement. And I think that if you've got the opportunity to place your product, or at least place the feeling of your product into a video game world, but you don't actually put up an advertisement for that product, I mean, that's a difference. That's a very distinct, different kind of thing.
Yeah, maybe I'm being too specific about what I would consider an Easter egg. Like, to me, an Easter egg is a reveal for, you know, folks who are paying attention and who know either an aspect of development or know a little bit about what the thing is being referenced. Like, to me, those are little fun things for super nerds. What
did you just call me? What did you mean?
We're two peas in a pod here, Jace.
All right, that's what I like to hear.
But the idea that a company would pay for that kind of thing, I don't think that's it. To me, they're different. Like, a product placement is one thing, an advertisement is another, but an Easter egg, I'm not gonna. Thinking about it professionally, I'm not gonna pay somebody to give some obscure reference to, you know, my product in some out of the way arena of some kind. Somebody has to unlock some secret room and then they get, oh no, there's an advertisement here. To me, that doesn't make much sense.
You have to unlock the secret vending machine room.
Yeah, right. And then you're done, Merc, and use a quarter to get that cuckoo cola.
Guys, find art of Dunmer drinking Coca-Cola. You should send that to us. Tweet that at us.
No, please don't.
Fan art.
Don't ruin my immersion.
So yeah, some of these sponsorships may wind up being annoying and out of touch, but the sponsors do make products happen, and without them a lot of our favorite things wouldn't exist. And in a completely unrelated note, this episode of Sokan Podcast is brought to you by no, we are not sponsored. We're not legally allowed to say that someone is sponsoring us and then not clearly remind you that it is a joke in very much a joke, but
Are we sponsored by Molin?
Right.
sure.
This makes us amateurs instead of professionals, right?
You guys are getting paid. Moving on. On January 23rd, CBS All Access premiered the first episode of their new Star Trek series, Picard. We're going to keep this introduction brief because I have heard that there's some opinions that have been expressed.
Opinions.
Obviously, some old school fans of Star Trek have apparently had some mixed feelings about what we've seen in the series so far.
Obviously.
In part because of one might consider wokeness or political correctness about the series, although others are feeling some nostalgia that radiates from it. Do you think Picard is banking on getting old Star Trek fans like Jace watching, or trying to pull in new viewers, or both to some extent?
They have to do both. Like, that's the whole point, right? When you do something to either reboot or sequelize or prequelize, your goal is never just to say, oh, new audience. Your goal is always to pull in the people who were fans in the past and then create a whole new generation of fans for today, so that your franchise has life, so your franchise can go on and on and on and on. I mean, personally, from my point of view, as an old school Star Trekker, this particular series is definitely more favorable, more appetizing, more enticing to the old school. And I say old school with a little bit of tongue-in-cheek because old school is really Kirk, Spock, 60s Trek. But the 80s Next Generation Trek is old now. But really, Picard, when you call something Star Trek with the name of a character, you're going for that audience primarily who watched that character in his heyday.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that it's named for Picard. It's definitely to pull in those folks who are the next generation fans like myself, and it's we're gonna get into it here in a bit, I'm sure, but it's not paced like a next generation show. It's very, very different. It's much more modern in the way that modern storytelling tends to be. In that it's gritty and it's kind of, I don't know, it's a much more J.J. Abrams lens flare, stab this guy kind of show than the old Star Trek used to be, and that's more appealing to a modern audience. So clearly there's an effort to pull in folks from both camps.
Now, we all love Sir Patrick Stewart at Sokan. It's not something that we're afraid to express. But do you guys think that launching a new series starring a 79-year-old man playing the same character he played when he was 50 is perhaps a little short-sighted? And do you think he's still got this character in him?
I liked in the first episode they actually made an in-character reference to him being an elderly man. They were trying to run up a flight of stairs and he was like, ugh, hold on, man, like, this is tough. And the Daj that was with him had to run back and help him up the stairs. That to me was it was not only telling about the character being older, but a nod to the fact that Patrick Stewart is an elderly gentleman these days. I'm not sure it was short-sighted. You do run the risk, of course, with elderly actors of them perhaps passing in the midst of shooting, but frankly, that's a risk you run with any actor. It's just a little bit more likely with somebody elderly. I do still think he's got this character in him. He seems sharp enough. He seems good to play the older version of Picard that we knew. So I think it's all right.
I am morally offended the question, because do you think he's still got this character in him is an affront to all things decent. Sir Patrick Stewart and Jean-Luc Picard are one and the same. And he brought so much of his gentlemanship and his gravitas and his training to that role that there is a hard time for there's a hard time for people like me who grew up on it to separate the two guys. Like, I hear Patrick Stewart talk in an interview, and I'm thinking they're interviewing Jean-Luc Picard. When you hear him talk about Jean-Luc, when you hear him talk about acting, you know this character for him is a lot more than just a character on a page. For him, besides the fact that it really catapulted his career. He had a long and successful career prior to Star Trek Next Generation, but he really became a household name, obviously during the Star Trek run. But Picard and him are very similar human beings. They're wise and have strong intuition and believe in justice. There's a strong moral principle core there that drives both of them. So of course he's still got it within him. The character, he put so much of himself into the character of Picard that I think that it wouldn't matter how old the man is. You know, he can pull Picard out of his pocket at any time.
See, I guess I have watched too much Family Guy, where Patrick Stewart is also Deputy Director Bullock in my head. Because in that cartoon, he looks like Patrick Stewart, but he's a bit of a lunatic sociopath, and he does that well too. It's hilarious, honestly, and I think it is a testament to how good an actor he is to be able to pull off such completely polar opposite roles. But he's a good actor. So I think he did Picard well, just like he did Deputy Director Bullock hilariously.
On American Dad.
Oh, American Dad, I said Family Guy. Yes,
not on
American
Family
Dad,
Guy.
sorry.
You see, a true fan of Patrick Stewart would know that. So the truth of the matter is, he is a fantastic actor. He is classically trained, and he can probably play anything. I do think he has a very strong sense of humor. When you hear him talk, he's funny. He's a funny guy, and he can be, I guess, raucous or coarse. His jests can be a little, I don't want to say over the line for somebody like me who doesn't really have a line, but yeah, he's a funny guy. But that depth, I think, and I'm going to go back to the word gravitas. That's something Patrick Stewart brings to the role of Picard, and I don't know that anybody else back in the day or even now could come close to being Jean-Luc Picard. They recast Kirk, for instance, with Chris Pine, and I think Chris Pine grabbed the swagger of Jim Kirk really, really well. He has a similar look, but he doesn't necessarily look like the original Kirk, Bill Shatner, but honestly, I thought he did a great job with the role. If they tried to recast Picard, I don't know that they could do it. I don't know that anybody would buy it. Nobody else could step into the role of that particular captain and pull it off.
I don't know. Let's not forget the gravitas that he also brought to the poop emoji. There's something about an actor that has the kind of class that could do that and make poop noble, as he did.
I'm with you. I mean, there's no disagreement here. I'm with you.
I do think though that there are other actors that can. Like McKellen is an example, and granted, I know he's a good friend of Patrick Stewart, but Ian McKellen is another one that I think has a similar gravitas and could probably deliver the same. I don't disagree. Patrick Stewart's a phenomenal actor, and I don't disagree. Jean-Luc Picard, he's my favorite Star Trek captain.
Me too.
He's actually as a character. When I was getting commissioned as a lieutenant in the Army, he's the kind of commander that I always aspired to be. He was humble in certain ways. He sought the advice of his direct reports, and was fair and was just an honorable decision maker, and that was
principled.
Yeah, very principled. So he was certainly a character that I admired, and one that I in my real life even aspired to be when it came to military service, and even sometimes out of that. And I have no doubt that Patrick Stewart poured some of himself into that. But one can't forget he is an actor, and there's a certain amount of distance one must keep from a character.
It's funny that you say that, because so much of how I try to be a leader in real life is what I would call a boiling down of things that I learned from Jean-Luc Picard. As far as any of the captains, he's the only one that I would really take that kind of mentorship from. I don't know that Catherine Janeway had it. I don't know that Sisko had it. Kirk, he always wanted to have sex with women, and I can't relate to that.
No, you can't.
But Jean-Luc Picard, he had a set of principles, and he let them lead him rather than him being the leader. He had a set of principles that pulled him along. But I loved his round table style too. Get everybody that's smart and genius around your table, listen to what they have to say, pick the best idea, and then that's what we're going to go with. And then I'll lead you based on what these experts have said. I think that's a really, really powerful way to lead. And, it wasn't always about his idea. It wasn't always about what he thought was best. He listened. And some of my favorite scenes, actually, of those of the original series are him listening to his bridge staff.
Totally. The best leaders are the ones who surround themselves with people who are smarter than they.
Absolutely.
100%.
So obviously we are thrilled to be more of a character, especially with the role that it's played in shaping how I guess all three of us have really moved forward in our own lives. But that said, do we think that this is a story that needs to be told, or are we a little afraid of what they're gonna do with all this screen time that they've been slated for?
Well, there's always the chance that they're gonna screw it up, that they're gonna go to the least common denominator, that they're gonna take the character that we all love and put urine on his head and ruin it for us. Thus far, episodes 1 and 2 are out. Thus far, I am completely on board with where they are going and what they are doing. It is a wonderful show. I have enjoyed every moment of it. So I'm not too worried about it at this point, when put like that.
Honestly, I'm glad that Kathleen Kennedy is not in charge of this project. Or she would have for sure turned him into some douche canoe of the character that we knew. I'm not as in love with the story as Jace is. To me, it's a real significant departure from the Next Generation, and granted, that's for a lot of reasons. Not the least of which is the fact that audiences they don't seem to be as interested in the kind of show that the Next Generation was. It was a show that kind of it challenged us morally. It put dilemmas in front of an audience, and it said, what really is the right choice? And that to me was probably one of the most interesting aspects of the show. There was, of course, some silliness with some of the science of it, because the science simply doesn't exist for faster than light travel and a bunch of things that they had to kind of make pretend. But for the science we know, they adhere to it pretty strictly. This show doesn't. It just throws it all out the window, and they're like, hey, guess what? A star goes supernova out of the blue, and everybody's surprised, and we have to. It's based on J.J. Abrams' silly movies, and it's in a different universe than the one I enjoyed, which held fast to known science and known rules of physics and reality, with the addition of, hey, this might be a thing in the future. And we've instead gone to crazy JJ land without any regard for known reality.
So first of all, JJ doesn't understand how big space is. We see that in multiple instances in both Star Trek and Star Wars. And JJ did make some mistakes. We can talk about Star Wars in a minute, but in Star Trek 2, he made some mistakes. Part of it was the Hopus star going supernova and having the potential to affect the whole galaxy. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Writers have tried to retcon it in the comics and say that it was a subspace explosion, and thus that's the reason why it was so dangerous. However, the show, Picard, has retconned some of that bad science and made it more about the Romulan star that exploded, and thus would make a lot more sense that it would threaten Romulus and Remus.
Right. But it's still a star that went nova out of nowhere, and they had to, a star doesn't just just go nova. It takes thousands to hundreds of millions of years for a star, like once it starts showing signs of it. Like it's not a surprise.
Well, we don't necessarily know why. There are hints in some of the comic books that it was not a natural phenomenon, and we know for
comics, sure.
Well, I'm just saying, and you can find canon where stars go supernova because of some external factor. In fact, Star Trek Generations, one of the main plot points was that the dude, I can't think of his name, Soren, had the technology to blow up suns, and he would change the gravity of the galaxy so that the Nexus would go where he wanted it to go.
Right.
I mean, there are definitely canon sources that show that the stars can blow. And we may find out eventually in television rather than comics that it was not a natural phenomenon. That doesn't bother me too bad.
It's been implied that it was a natural phenomenon. It hasn't been implied that it was anything that anybody forced to happen. And if that happens, okay, big reveal, ooh, that'll be interesting, but that just hasn't been the thing. That's not the only issue though with just reality. There's also a whole lot of just, I guess, like super modern takes on silliness, like Picard hits his communicator and he says, "Don't hang up," to the person on the other end. Like, don't hang up. Like, it's not a telephone. And those kinds of, like, you never saw that in any of the other Star Treks. It's just a complete, I don't know, like, silly modernization of what has been a futuristic sci-fi show. Not to mention, even the whole tone of Star Trek. It was Gene Roddenberry, his idea was that humanity would evolve past a lot of our petty squabbles. This show embraces it, highlights it, makes it a focal point of the show, and revolves around it completely. Like it's almost a total departure from Gene Roddenberry's idea of Star Trek.
But that's not new. DS9 delved into Section 31.
Yes,
decades ago.
That's
we were
when
talking
Gene Roddenberry
about
stopped having an influence, and
Well,
that made me sad.
But regardless, the point of the matter is that Star Trek has diverged from Gene's original vision quite a long time ago. Deep Space Nine was the first series that launched after Gene died. And a lot of the themes there, and DS9 is some Star Trek fans' favorite series. Wasn't mine, but a lot of people really like that particular Trek. It's a little darker, it's a little more real, and yeah, there is a little more I guess questionable humanity ethics, whereas he really guarded that, and that was his vision. I can respect where he was going. I mean, I get it. You have a certain core vision for what you want your medium to tell, and that is humanity has evolved past this. I get it. That's where he was. However, it didn't stick. It didn't last past his death, unfortunately. So that was already starting to change. The fact that the storytelling style is different, that's just because TV changed.
Yeah, I don't disagree that TV viewership have different expectations, and the way that shows are shown is different. I completely agree. There were some elements of even Star Trek TNG that, as certain actors were not doing the show anymore, they had deaths and things like that impacted this series as a whole. So it wasn't completely like, oh, if you watch this episode, you'll have every idea of what's going on. There were some changes over time. But yes, it was mostly standalone episodes. Personally, and perhaps it's because of my generation, our generation, I don't know. Perhaps it's because I grew up on those shows and had such a high opinion of them that I prefer that. But that's neither here nor there. The idea of the fact that the shows are slightly different isn't really my main beef. I get that that's just times changing and audiences changing. It really is about the whole tone of what was Star Trek is abandoned. The idea that they're like, I like dark and gritty. I like The Witcher for it, and I like I even that was one of the big differences between, in my opinion, Star Wars and Star Trek. Is Star Trek was the thoughtful the thoughtful show where you're presented with things that are going to dig into your preconceptions and make you actually think about stuff. Star Wars was blasters and space wizards, and like that was the action-packed show. Well, now we've merged the two, where Star Trek is now just Star Wars.
We're absolutely about to do that in Picard, though. I mean, we're about to talk about what it means to be a person, what it means to be a sentient being. We're going back to like the very seminal episode "Measure of a Man" in TNG.
Yeah, I mean, for 2 minutes in between fight scenes, like it's just a completely different.
Episode 2 barely had any fighting. It was very cerebral. It was very talky. It was an episode. In fact, that was one of the, I won't say I had a criticism, but it was something, it was almost jarring that I noticed, because the tone of episode 1 was very flash, 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 big, 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 go, go, go. We opened with a big fight scene. We had a big fight scene. Episode 2 was kind of slow in some ways, where we got a chance to dig into the mind of the villain, for instance, and hear their perspective, and it was a lot more talky.
I think even with that, though, it really is just a departure from the optimism of what was Star Trek. Star Trek was about kind of the best of humanity, what humanity could be, and this is the worst of humanity. This is a hypocritical humanity. This is a dark and gritty humanity, where we really are the worst that we surmised. This is kind of a self-loathing Star Trek that I don't dislike necessarily, but Star Trek had always been hopeful. Star Trek had always been a point of optimism, and it just isn't now. And that kind of makes me sad.
I think that it still is. I still think that the principles of Jean-Luc Picard are going to win out. I think that the understanding that humanity is united towards one thing is going to be the thing that makes the show great ultimately. There really isn't a darkness to humanity. Certainly Starfleet has changed a bit, but we've always had those crap-ass admirals that would show up. I mean, that's all the way back to TOS. There hasn't been a really strong admiral that's a good guy ever. They always are kind of a bit too big for their britches. But I think that the idea that humanity is still able to succeed and attain greatness is still there. There's no war on Earth. It doesn't appear that we're having a lot of poverty on Earth. Earth still appears pretty utopian in terms of the vision. In fact, the main villains aren't even human. The main villains, up to this point that we can understand, are Romulan.
Yeah, but the idea that humanity is morally right, there's a big difference in old Star Trek and new. Old had humanity making moral decisions, and I say humanity as Starfleet because, let's face it, Starfleet does tend to make decisions for humanity. But now they're making really questionable decisions, and that's the whole reason that Picard left Starfleet. Now, I'm not averse to changes in things. I'm not averse to saying, yeah, things have shifted, but this is it's a very significant departure from the hopeful Starfleet that even a captain like Picard might have a disagreement with on a particular mission. Like, this was Romulus was dying, of course, from a physically impossible surprise supernova star, but then on top of that you have Starfleet acting in a very non-Starfleet way to say, oh no, these are our enemies, this race of people are our enemies. I'm not sure. But
that's not new. I mean, did you see The Undiscovered Country? That was kind of the whole point of that movie as well. That's original Trek cast. That's something they've been wrestling with for a while. We have our awful impulses. We have our awful inclinations, and that's the point.
Right.
You overcome them. And I think and Star Trek has always had a dark side. That the whole point of Star Trek, to me, isn't necessarily Gene's vision. It's the way that the stories impact what's happening in real life. And right now, in the world, it's a relatively dark time to be on Earth.
Alright, Picard is currently slated for a 2-season run, at least, on CBS All Access. We'll keep up with how the series goes, and we'll let you know how things seem to be shaken out. If you have thoughts on the series, though, please do let us know on Twitter with the hashtag Sokan Podcast. Alright, guys. The final go at our quota, and we're tilting at windmills here, but The Rise of Skywalker premiered in theaters on December 20th of last year, and the reviews have been all over the place. With a Metacritic score of 54, an IMDb score of 6.9 out of 10, a Rotten Tomatoes rating of 52, and a Google user score of 75. I mean, that's quite the gamut. it may seem that those numbers really aren't that far apart with a total of maybe a 20% difference, but especially for movies, that's actually a really wide margin of variance. Nobody's saying it's the worst movie ever made, but no one seems to be saying it's the best. But there's still a lot of divide there. So to start us off, do you guys think that some of the backlash this film is getting is leftover hatred from The Last Jedi, or has it earned its own displeasure?
I think it's a healthy degree of both. First of all, The Last Jedi was hot garbage, and it deserves all the hate that is heaped upon it. And I think anything that is a result of The Last Jedi deserves residual hate. Let the dark side fuel you. But I do think that this movie has its own flaws, and I do think that it deserves some of its own criticism because of it. Now, that's not to say J.J. Abrams didn't have his work cut out for him to try and make a good movie out of the steaming pile of garbage that was left him from The Last Jedi, but he still made a strange movie that was like 4 movies all jammed into one to try and make up for The Last Jedi's holes, and created a bunch of his own holes as well, and didn't answer a lot of his own crazy mystery boxes that he likes to set up.
So, The Last Jedi, out of the 9 films, it is my 9th. It ranks 9th. I don't even want to call it my 9th favorite, because it wasn't a favorite. I do have some angst towards it, and I have a little angst towards Rian Johnson. But that said, I am not at all a Rise of Skywalker hater. In fact, I enjoyed the movie from from the fanfare all the way through to the final credits. I really, really liked the movie. Every minute of it. And I would rank it, I'd give it a solid A-. So like a 91. I'd be in the definitely the higher end of all those scores with like a 91%. Certainly there were a couple of issues, but nothing in the movie ruined it for me. Nothing in the movie pulled me out of it. There was so much smile and so much feeling and so much closure that I felt like, as a literally lifelong Star Wars fan, I got the movie that I wanted to be the period on the sentence. So I don't know where so much of the backlash is coming from. Certainly there are some criticisms people could have. I have a couple of my own, but I'm not a Sith, so I don't hate. But I don't know. I mean, I'm of the opinion that it was a good movie, and it was a really good capstone on a fantastic franchise.
Agree to disagree.
Alright, so then, Raylo. Did it make sense? Was it just fan service?
So this is a funny question, because does it make sense, or was it fan service? I am not sure the fans were asking for that. I mean, I am a part of a lot of fan communities. I'm in the Star Wars subreddit. I follow along to all the IGN Star Wars stories. I have pings that come up on my phone when anything Star Warsy happens, and I didn't see a whole lot of people asking for Raylo. So it's really weird that anyone would think that it was fan service. Particularly, did it make sense? I guess that's a better question for me personally. I don't know that it necessarily made sense when it happens, and you have that what moment. At least that's how my moment was, like that what. Then you can certainly go back to the other 2 films in the sequel trilogy, and start to put things together to get you to a place where these 2 beings, these 2 people, were getting more intimate. And when I say intimate, I don't necessarily mean that in the relationship way. I mean it as 2 people who get closer and closer and closer together and start to see the innermost thoughts and feelings of another person. So did it make sense? You could make it make sense. It wasn't anything I was asking for, and personally I think the movie would have been fine without it.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that the fan base was just moist about. Dude, they were all over the place shipping Raylo. It was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen, because they had zero chemistry. They were nothing but nemeses throughout the entire trilogy, with the exception of Rey seeing a whole Kyle Swole, whatever.
Ben Swallow.
Ben Swallow, that's it. Ben Swallow, shirtless, and she blushed a little bit in their like Force intergalactic Skype calls. which was dumb, by the way. But then, like, that was it. That was the only element of any kind of connectivity between the two on any romantic level. And it was simply because the dude was shirtless in an intergalactic force Skype call. And that just isn't a means to create a relationship on. And everybody just went nuts and lost their minds over, hey, let's ship these two. No, they want to kill each other. In fact, they did. So let it go. Let it go, you shipping friendly nerds.
Let the past die. Also, Leo,
Well-
I love that we make fun of you so much for not knowing Star Wars, but even you know this.
There is a part of me that just has to say I would have been perfectly fine if they didn't have that moment. Like that, it did. I
Yeah.
don't want to say it broke me. But as far as the Rise of Skywalker, that moment at the end there when they kissed, I thought, what? I don't really. I mean, I didn't see it coming. It didn't feel like it was building towards that at any point. You know, certainly that you could make a case that that's. But you know. Honestly, it almost even cheapened what a relationship is and can be to me. You don't fight someone and have that sort of adversarial relationship and then suddenly kiss. There's something
Yeah.
almost off about that. So
Yeah.
I didn't really care for Raylo. I'm gonna be honest.
Right. It in a lot of ways, it kind of reminded me of where some people had tried to find the relationship in 50 Shades of Grey, or have tried to find the relationship in Twilight, where, like, when you look at it objectively, it is a toxic relationship. It's not at all what you hope to have with a significant other. It was bad. And the fact that people are insisting on this kind of makes me sad for them and their real life relationships, because what does that say about what they consider to be healthy? It's bad juju, man.
Well, in the film, Rey was revealed to be the granddaughter of Palpatine, because apparently Palpatine. How did you feel about this reveal?
Gross.
We don't know. It's the future. It's like a back to tank insemination.
Oh, that's even grosser.
So someone actually apparently did the math, and conception of Rey's father would have been 4 years after the Empire was begun.
Do it.
So that's that. You're all welcome for that image. I also hate it. But anyway, how did you feel about this reveal? And how do you feel about her then abandoning that heritage to inherit the Skywalker name at the end of the film?
I loved it, and I'll tell you why I loved it. Because I was broken inside after Rian Johnson decided that she was supposed to be a nobody. That irritated the ever-loving crap me. Obviously, she was supposed to be a somebody. Obviously, there was something that was supposed to be happening with her heritage, and he wanted to say, no, there wasn't. So the fact that JJ turned it around and put it back where she actually was someone important to the saga, she fit into the 9-film saga that we were all invested in, absolutely made me feel fantastic. I was very happy about it. It wasn't the first time that I had heard that theory, but, you know, prior to that, it was just theories. We thought she could be anyone, and the fact that it fell on Palpatine, in hindsight, is actually my favorite way it could have fallen, because it shows that you can get away, you can break your destiny, and that destiny probably doesn't exist. It really is more about choice. It is about deciding who you're going to be and being that person rather than what you were even designed to be. So I loved it. I'm happy it was there. And of course, you know, abandoning the heritage of Palpatine, I just said, I love that choice was there, and she decided that she was going to be a Skywalker, and I think that choice is probably the most powerful ability we have as people.
In fact, I remember positing that Palpatine theory here on this very podcast. But I'm not going to toot my own horn about seeing the future, as I just did. But the idea that she was a Palpatine, I don't know. I thought it was a little forced, even after I posited the theory. Honestly, even after reevaluating some of the stuff that happened, particularly in the original trilogy, the idea that Palpatine somehow survived the destruction of the Death Star, somehow survived Darth Vader's sacrifice to end him. I don't know, it cheapened a lot of stuff that existed in the previous Star Wars. It made Anakin's arc kind of worthless because Palpatine didn't actually die. Yes, he came around to good, but he didn't actually accomplish anything. Palpatine was pulled out of a hat, I think, after Rian Johnson decided to go rogue on his movie, and Abrams had to figure out how to reconcile it. He had made Snoke originally, and I think that was supposed to be the villain for the trilogy, but Rian Johnson is a and we may need to edit that out, but he was just not having it. He wasn't a game or a team player when it comes to making a trilogy, and he did everything he could to undermine what had been established. And Abrams had to figure out how to make this thing work, so he pulled Palpatine out of a hat because it's a name that most watchers of Star Wars would understand without really understanding the implications of making Palpatine still live. Unfortunately, it undermines quite a bit. Everything that was supposed to be a finale in the previous Star Wars is no longer a finale. If someone can survive the destruction of the Death Star, it means that even watching him vaporize in this latest iteration of Star Wars doesn't mean he's dead. He can come back because he just didn't die. It was dark force, dark side powers that some would say are unnatural, and that's all that needs to be said about the fact that he just isn't dead yet. To me, was silly, and I thought it undermined quite a bit of previous Star Wars canon that I wasn't happy to say goodbye to in order for him to live and be the bad guy again.
Star Wars tends to do that. It takes, it likes planet-killing technology, and it likes to bring people back from, or villains especially, back from the dead. I think that it fits right in with Star Wars, to be perfectly honest. And I think that there were plenty of hints, if you go back and look at the sequels, that Rey was intended to be a Palpatine all along. I don't think he pulled that name out of a hat. I think that there are enough visual hints and enough clues to think that the intention was for her to be a Palpatine, at least in the original meetings prior to The Force Awakens.
Ooh, I don't see that at all.
They used the same lightsaber style out of the blue. Her name is even kind of hinted at the, Rey means, ruler means empress, emperor, being the child of the emperor. There's plenty of clues there, I think, that say, so for instance, then if you're looking at like it being a dichotomy or a versus, you've got Kylo Ren, who's the grandson of Vader, and then you've got the granddaughter of Palpatine. I mean, this whole saga is really about the Palpatine Skywalker spiral. I mean, in a lot of ways, it makes a lot of narrative sense. It's kind of poetic justice that she was a Palpatine. I think that it's beautiful in a way, and I'm glad that they landed on it. Their musical themes, Palpatine's theme that John Williams wrote is very similar to Rey's theme. I think John Williams was probably in on it from the beginning. I don't know. I think it's pretty good storytelling, personally.
I don't know. The idea of, so there were a lot of things that Kylo Ren even said to Rey about her parents that was like twisted into, oh no, he didn't mean her parents were nobody. He meant her parents tried to be nobody. But like, he said a bunch of stuff like they sold you for drinking money, like a whole bunch of stuff that like Rian Johnson completely went off the rails with his interpretation of who Rey was from, who she was of. And I think unless everyone within that movie was lying about Rey's parentage, which, I mean, I'm not saying that that's not possible. It just doesn't make sense that they would lie about it and then later say, no, I was telling you the truth the whole time, and somehow try and twist the kind of nonsense they said in The Last Jedi into the truth.
Do you mean it was true from a certain point of view?
No.
Because I feel like that's probably even the original trilogy.
Selling you for drinking money is not a point of view.
Well, we can ask Obi-Wan Kenobi because he had a good idea about things as well.
That may be what he told the person they sold Ray to. Oh, we
Right.
need drinking money. Take our
Oh
child.
yeah, so
Yeah.
one person thought it was true. So from a certain point of view.
Oh no.
I'm just saying that it is absolutely possible that it was true from a certain point of view. I mean, in an out of character, out of narrative world, I do think Rian Johnson was trying to throw his stink on Star Wars, and I do think he probably took some plans and said, no, we really have to change everything so that Star Wars is something different than it ever was. And I don't like what he did with Star Wars, and I don't like what he was trying to do with the characters, and I don't like that movie. But I do think Rise of Skywalker, which we're talking about today, rounded it out beautifully. I thought JJ took some of that was actually serendipitous. Like, I thought that some of the stuff that he fixed made it even a little bit better. So the fact that it was broken and then got fixed actually gave it some redemptive value. The fact, it was relatively devastating that that's I almost said Snape, like we're talking about
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter. That
Snape is one of my favorite characters.
No, I got off genre. That Snoke was I mean, you see that scene in Rise of Skywalker where there's all those Snokes in that cloning tank, and then it all you needed was that visual image to think all of it was a lie. Everything was a deceit. The whole thing was set up by the Emperor from the beginning, and that is absolutely in character with who Palpatine was. Sheev Palpatine was a master manipulator from day one. From episode 1, he is the Phantom Menace. So it would make perfect sense that he's still trying to manipulate and twist things even as time goes on after his survival. So him having this Snoke persona to, affect his will on the galaxy, that tank made all of it make sense for me. That cutting in half of Snoke in Last Jedi pissed me off, but that tank made me think, oh, he was in fact a nobody. This was all a big ploy going on. It fixed it for me, and I thought JJ did a great job of fixing things for me as a fan.
I think JJ also messed a lot of stuff up in this rendition. This is a master manipulator who creates a fleet of starships, who creates a fleet of star destroyers with all of their crews and whatnot in secret. Okay, as unbelievable as that nonsense can be, but then doesn't give them shields within an atmosphere, and then has to, they don't know what up is in order to get out of the atmosphere without some kind of guiding tower. There are so many silly little MacGuffins and silly plot contrivances in order to make the good guys win that undermine the genius that is supposed to be Palpatine, where he's supposed to be this brilliant strategist who has created this generations-long plot, and he still fails to account for the most immediate of concerns when it comes to the heroes that are supposed to be in this particular movie. They roll in, and they're like, oh, these ships can't go up. What ship can't go up without a tower?
Bro, that is Star Wars. Did you see
idiotic.
Did you see A New Hope? There's a Womp Rat-sized hole that if you shoot a whole moon blows up. That's how they
and they made a whole
front.
movie to try and account for that silly plot
give
hole.
us some time and we'll get a movie about why those ships didn't have
And the
shields.
starships can't go
It'll
up?
just take 20 years or so. It'll take 20 years or so. There'll be a movie out to explain it. You just gotta have faith in the franchise, baby.
I have no faith.
Speaking of lack of faith and perhaps indeed of hatred, the sequel series has gotten a good bit of it. But aside from the series-long redemption arc, let's talk about Kylo Ren's redemption arc. A lot of people have said that Adam Driver has helped carry the entire series with his performance. And how do you feel about the character's ultimate passing into the Force?
Adam Driver did carry the series. Let's be honest. I think that, Rey and her actress were great. Adam Driver is a brilliant actor. I mean, we've seen that in, that wedding movie that just came out, in Girls. He's just a really, really good actor. And what he gave to the character of Kylo Ren did make us feel something. He did appear tortured. He did appear broken. He did look sad and victorious when he killed his father. He did look redeemed after he embraced the light. I think that he really did carry. If you look at an emotional arc, if you look at a character arc of the 3 films, it's Kylo Ren's that we're all going to look back on and think, it's a pretty good series. it wasn't Rey's. Rey's arc really wasn't that great. It was just kind of a straight line. Kylo Ren's he's the character that changed from beginning to end, and that's the one that to me gave some real heart to the films.
Yeah, you brought up Rey. Rey to me there was no arc whatsoever. She started amazing and she ended amazing. Like, she was the best thing ever. And there just was no arc for her. No challenge, no development, no arc. She just was awesome from beginning to end. Kylo, however, okay, Adam Driver, a great actor, but he looked like a pouting teenager from every shot I ever saw him in. Granted, he was supposed to be tortured, and well, he looked like a pouting teenager. And then he was supposed to be considering his heritage. He looked like a pouting teenager. And then, okay, well, maybe he is redeemed. Nope, he looks like a pouting teenager. He was... now, this isn't his fault. And Adam Driver, again, is a phenomenal actor. He looked dumb for the role. He just was not a villain. He doesn't have a villain face. He has a pouty teenager face in every single shot I have seen him in. And it's... I hate to undermine his acting cred, because I've seen him in other stuff, and he's good. He's very, very good. But he just didn't fit any of the roles that I hoped he would fit. When he took off his helmet, honestly, when he took off his helmet as Kylo Ren for the first time, I laughed because he looked like a pouty teenager. And I was like, this can't be for real. He just doesn't have the look. But
so I'm not
nothing you can
trying
do
to
about it.
burst your bubble here, but have you watched any of the other trilogies? Because we have some real teen angst going on with whiny Luke Skywalker and
Yeah, but he wasn't
and
supposed
Hayden
to be
Christensen, who
the like dark
Sand.
villain.
Sans is sucky, man. I mean, that's kind of the tone, right?
I do want to point out, Kylo Ren is 33.
Yeah, he looks like he's 15.
I don't know. I thought he did fantastic. I thought he gave a great performance.
He's
his
a great
expressions.
actor. I don't mean to undermine it. He just didn't look the part. Is my only point.
I mean,
Like,
I guess if we're
it
just
was
bring up,
so miscast.
oh no, it was not. I don't know who could have done it better. He's got a range that's unbelievable, and that is the point. He had that angst of a solo child of a Skywalker legacy, and he was twisted inside because of it.
I'm not saying it wasn't conflicted, and I'm not saying that Adam Driver can't portray conflicted. He has the face of an angsty 15-year-old, and that doesn't spell villain to me. That spells, dude, your car privileges are taken away because you're being an
Well,
That's what that
just how
spells
he
to me.
looks. Like, that's just how Adam Driver looks. You can't change the way a
Yes,
person
but
looks.
you have to account for that in your casting.
But I mean, you have the option of when you cast Hayden Christensen, a beautiful young nubile teen, and when you cast Mark Hamill as a young innocent face, like that's part of they chose him for a reason. They cast him with that face for a reason. Adam Driver wasn't a big somebody before. Sure, he had plenty of successful work before Star Wars, but they picked that face because that's the face they wanted us to see.
Right,
That
he
was
has dark
the-
hair. And he has dark eyes, so he can look dark side.
Do you know how many? I'll tell you what. I had a buddy who actually auditioned for that role. He's an actor. He's done some TV. He's relatively, I don't want to say famous. He's had some success. He is a beautiful young man. They didn't want that. They chose a look like Adam Driver. They wanted that particular set of features.
They
to
wanted
tell
the
the story.
angsty teenager for a 33-year-old role.
Also, hard to disagree with both on Adam Driver being the one that carried the series. When I watch these movies, it will be to watch them for Poe and for Finn. And also,
No, they were both fantastic too. I totally agree.
Well, they needed to be gay together, and the fact that they didn't do it shows me that
It's
nobody in
heartbreaking.
Hollywood has any balls.
I do think that would have been really interesting. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see that.
Yeah, that's how they were playing it. Nobody can tell me any different. Those two actors were playing it that those two men were in love. The
Well,
end.
they were playing it in the very first movie for a bit, and then Rian Johnson decided no, and like completely thrust them apart, and then they never came back together.
they did my heart.
They did in my heart.
They did in my heart. I have a whole fanfic about it. In my
Jason's
head
gonna draw some
canon.
pictures for us.
Anyway, moving on. So how do you guys feel about the voices of the Jedi past resurfacing long enough to encourage Rey in the film's climax? Cool moment?
That's how I feel about
Meh.
it. Amazing. Amazing. And here's why. Because it gave validity to every canonized Star Wars show. It gave a big fat thumbs up to Clone Wars. It gave a big thumbs up to Rebels, and of course gave a big hug back to the films prior. You've got a disparate production across decades of animated to live action to another animated. You've got actors who stepped up to this film to lend their voices to characters that were relatively obscure in the grand scheme of Star Wars. And it, to me, that moment when you heard those voices that you have known for a long, long time in these, from original to Clone Wars to Rebels, it touched my soul. It absolutely moved me, especially because I was a huge fan of Rebels, and hearing Kanan Jarrus, aka Caleb Dume, speak, it just, something about that got to my heart. And then, I mean, Mace Windu, we had Hayden Christensen came back. You got to hear even the original Obi-Wan Kenobi, help me, Alec Guinness. All those voices from 40 years of Star Wars were in that moment of, we're all there, we're all with you. Come on, that was the best moment in the movie.
I think it bowel moved me. It was a cheap trick to validate what is a garbage movie that has invalidated much of what the series and the genre has accomplished as far as good storytelling in the past. This was not a good movie, and it instead capitalized on the nostalgia of better works, better actors, better characters, better character arcs, better stories, and it took them and it threw them all together and conglomerated them into this garbage, nonsensical uttering in this horrible movie. And I hated it.
Ouch.
How could you hate it? Like, you don't have a soul. I've decided. There's no way you can hate that. You got to hear Mace Windu.
No, it is as if taking some of the brilliance of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, taking some of those great characters and thrusting them into The Hobbit, which is garbage,
Guys, we've got
and saying it makes this good.
Well, everyone gets to be wrong sometimes. Today's Leo's day. Moving on.
We are incredibly over time already. But let's go ahead and end this very long segment with an important discussion. Carrie Fisher. Her appearance in Skywalker and her final passing to the Force, her assistance in redeeming Kylo Ren. Did this movie do our late Princess Leia justice?
I'm just going to say really quickly, because I know we're short on time. The job was really hard to pay her justice because Carrie Fisher died. And so it's really hard to take existing footage and then camera tricks and put together something that is meaningful and deep. I thought with what they had and what they were trying to do, they honored her, and I was appreciative of it. I liked the fact, I mean, to boil it all down, I liked the fact in the final moments of the film when we were back on Tatooine that we got to see Luke and Leia together as Force ghosts. And I thought that was probably, for me, a very sweet final nod to both the princess and Carrie Fisher.
100% same. There's a big part of me that wondered if we didn't know that Carrie Fisher had passed, if a lot of the scenes that we saw with Leia and some of the weirdness of like camera angles and the stuff that they were trying to do to pass it off, that she was really there. I wondered, would we notice, would we really be paying attention if we didn't know this, out of character fact about her passing? And the truth is, I don't want to know. I'd rather not. I'd rather continue to try and remember her as the person and the actress, and then of course the character of Leia as we all knew her. So I try not to think about that too much, and I just want that to be the thing that's left untouched, untapped. As cynical and as critical as I am, I tried really hard not to be about those elements and just let them be.
Fans and haters alike, it may seem that Star Wars has fallen into a rather deep pit, perhaps fallen into the depths of the Death Star as it explodes again. But let's not forget, a new season of the Clone Wars is on its way this month. The Kenobi series has not been cancelled and will come out one day, and The Mandalorian was gold and is returning sooner than you might think. The beloved franchise may not be on its rise right now, but there is always new hope. It is the last time of the season, and that means I'm taking my own segment back again. I've gone mad with my imaginary power, and you all get to suffer for it. Hello, captive audience.
Go,
it
girl.
is my TED Talk. My teen talk.
Yes! Teen!
Alright, so for the end of the session, I wish I had one of my wild questions that I, for reference, for those of you who are listening, in the warm-ups and preseason episodes that we worked on, I threw some really off-the-wall questions at them, like, what would you rather find in your attic? 1,000 roaches or a human person? Sadly, I did not have one of quite that caliber, but I did think that this would be a nice opportunity to sort of say goodbye to people for even just a little while, by telling them 2 truths and a lie.
Oh no, we have to come up with 2 truths and a lie?
Oh Lord.
2 truths and a lie, and then the other 2 of us will try to guess which one of them is true and which one is the lie.
Guide us. Who goes first?
Alright, Jace, go ahead. You can go first.
Here are my 3 things. 2 truths, 1 lie. I was a sous chef and manager of an Italian restaurant. I was born in Naples, Italy. My first computer was an Apple IIe.
And we have to guess your lie?
Yeah, you have to guess my lie.
Okay. It's either the computer or the manager is the lie.
I'm gonna go with the computer. Like, I don't know. I don't feel like you're that old.
I think it's the computer, yeah. Okay.
Computer was the lie. Good job, you guys. We're actually
Hey!
close friends. You guessed it because it's true. I was born in Naples, Italy, and I was a manager and sous chef of an Italian restaurant. Excellent work. An Apple IIe was not my first computer.
Watch that, like, not even be a real computer model. We're just both like, yeah, sure. Sounds legit.
All right. Mine, I was a cook at Waffle House. I was a captain in the U.S. Army. And I was born in Fulda, Germany.
I know the answer.
I'm gonna go with the Waffle House one.
I believe that the lie that was you were born in Germany.
The lie was that I was born in Germany.
Hubba 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 hubba.
I was technically born in Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Technically? What do you mean you were
Two-
technically born
well,
somewhere?
I was only there for like 6 months, and then we moved because my dad was in the army. So
I mean, you were either born there or
I
you
was
weren't.
born. Okay, yes, I was born in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I had no memory of the place whatsoever, so I don't know it at all.
T, you're up. Go, girl.
Alright. There is technically a chance that I will inherit a title in the Scottish peerage. I've taken part in 6 different sports, and I am deathly afraid of pufferfish.
Did you say
Pufferfish fear is
pufferfish?
real. That's real. Be afraid of pufferfish.
What the
Those-
fuck is? I mean, what the
those-
heck is scary about a pufferfish?
Those things will kill you.
But everything else seems so legit. Like,
Well, 6 is a significant number. Like she said, 6 sports. It could be 7 or 5.
Oh, yeah, that could be a total jinx. I'm going to go with the sports thing, too. Good call.
Yeah, me too. Sports.
I am not actually deathly afraid of fish. I'm instead very
dang it.
wary of.
See, I knew there
You
was
should
nothing
be
to be
afraid of
afraid of.
pufferfish. They're
I
terrifying.
knew that was a dumb fear. No one would have it.
They'll
I
kill
should
you
go
if
with
you
my
eat them
gut.
wrong.
There is technically a chance that I will inherit a title from the Scottish peerage. My great
What is it?
grandmother owns 2 different sections of land. They are both the very impressive estates of being of 2 square feet. And again, it is a very technicality. I haven't even inherited the title because I'm too many steps away right now. But otherwise, I would be a lady of. I don't remember the names of the land off the top of my head. I'd have to look. But
Did you say
Yeah.
2 square feet?
yep,
You just have to
Girl,
kill
I
some
wouldn't be bragging
siblings,
about
though,
that.
right?
That feels like you clinging to something.
it
No,
is.
no, no. How many
it is
siblings do
actually-
you have to knock off to get it?
I'm actually the eldest of my sibling branch, but I'd have to there's some cousins in the way.
Okay, do you need
We
any
can
help?
take care of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but
He
actually
was a captain in the army. We kill
Yeah.
people now.
and
I
you were born
have
in Italy,
learned
so
how to
you
do
have
that, yeah.
diplomatic immunity. It's great.
Nice.
You
Let's
thought
do it.
Solomani was something. Just wait. We're going to
Let's-
start offing Scottish royalty.
Yes, let's talk offline. We'll get this done.
Yeah, but no, the program is actually where you can buy a section of land in a Scottish wildlife and nature preserve. So that way, that's how they maintain the area and keep it safe from development. is
So, do
by-
we call you Lady T, or is there like a Scottish accent to like Lady T?
I think it would just be lady, but again, I haven't inherited that yet, so we're gonna wait and see.
M'lady.
Great.
That's my
Lady,
Scottish
m'lady.
accent. M'lady. Is that Scottish? M'lady.
Well, if you guys would like to submit a tea time question for the next season of the podcast, head on over to sokangaming.com/sokanmedia and find the submission bar on the right-hand side of the page. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Season 4 finale of the Sokan Podcast. For more Sokan Media, visit us at sokangaming.com/sokanmedia, follow our Twitter @sokangaming, and subscribe to our YouTube, Sokan Gaming Community, and look for future episodes of the podcast on Google Podcasts and iTunes. Before we sign off, any final remarks for the audience, boys?
Man, thanks for listening.
I would just like to say thank you, Lady T, for providing us this awful Scottish accent.
That was Scottish? I thought it was choking on your tongue.
It hath been immortalized.
Freedom.
Tea lady.
Until next time, I've been T,
I've been Jace.
I've been Leo.
and we'll see you guys after a few weeks off for Season 5.
Stay classy, Sokan.
Thank you for listening to the Sokan Community Podcast. Craving more? Visit us on Twitter and YouTube at Sokan Gaming, as well as our website, www.sokangaming.com. Until next time, stay classy. Right, Jace?